Hey there, welcome to the vlog. So I just passed the 20th anniversary of the first time I came across the Atlantic, and I wanted to talk about basically the cycles and the ebb and flow of what's happened since. So back in those days the internet was fairly new, and I was working as a sysop for CompuServe in my spare time, and that was basically my introduction to the internet and how I ultimately ended up on this side of the Atlantic. Having said that, back in those days I was a desktop programmer. A long, long time ago, I can still remember how I used to make that code compile, and I knew if I had my code that I could make those chips explode. I wasn't a mobile programmer because mobile programming really wasn't a thing back in those days. Yes, there were cell phones, but there were Nokia cell phones, and you couldn't do anything with them that was custom. Fast forward to when Windows Mobile came out, I sort of switched over to mobile from desktop for a while, and then after working in mobile went back to desktop, then over to the Mac, then from the Mac to the iPhone, and then a year ago I stopped doing the iPhone and I became a back-end programmer. So the path from a programming standpoint is I started off really in the sort of Microsoft Basic and .NET areas, moved over, went through various permutations of C, whether it's Objective-C or C++, sometimes just straight C, back over through a little bit of Qt and a little bit of Objective-C again on the desktop, and then back into mobile, which was C and Objective-C. And now, all of a sudden, all of those languages have gone by the wayside, and I'm spending 99% of my time in Python. Now, it's not that I have anything against Python, but it's a language that is totally different in a lot of ways to what I've, quote, grown up with. And, it's one of those things that sometimes I sit there and question why it's so popular, but then I remember some of the silly things that used to happen in the old days that just cannot happen under Python. A perfect example of this would be going back to my very, very first program. Lines were numbered, and normally you went in increments of 10. So you had 10, print hello, 20, go to 10, and it would just loop round over and over. But then what happens if, say for instance, you want to pick a random number and then you want to change the colour before you print the next hello? Okay, so what you would do is you'd say, right, okay, at 15 we will pick the random colour, and we will set the ink at the next line, let's say 16. I've still got 17, 18 and 19 if I want to make further changes. So let's say we run the program and I again decide I want to make some changes. I want to insert a couple of notes in there. Okay, so we'll open up some audio channels and we'll throw in some code to do some beeping. And all of a sudden, if I now need to add any more code in there, I'd have to refactor the program back. Now, sometimes, various versions of BASIC did have a relist function, but generally that just, that was a luxury. It wasn't something that you expected to have there. But under a language such as Python, well, this could never happen because you can just insert as many lines as you want. Okay, it would be bad form to have a function that is, 1,000 lines long, but in theory, there's nothing stopping you from just keep inserting new lines wherever you need them. So that's the type of thing that couldn't happen in today's environment that, going back to what I originally started with, was a total possibility. The other thing that's also changed is by moving away again from the metal, then things like pointers and stuff is largely abstracted away from you. Now, this is very much reminiscent of the whole .NET side of things, where we basically were told, okay, there is no such thing as a pointer, and you just had your variables and you passed them around either by reference or by value, but you didn't really do too much with those references if you had them, unless you were calling an external DLL or something like that. So where I'm at right now, I just ordered something on Amazon, which you're going to see in the coming weeks after it's arrived and I've had a chance to play with it. Because I've also, at the same time as being abstracted away through Python on one hand, I got into FPGAs. if you don't know what that is, I will cover this at some later point, but all you need to know for this video is that it's programmable hardware. As a result, all of a sudden, you're back to having to understand the metal, as it were, and working out how to program circuit boards. So that's the total antithesis of the other end of the spectrum. So whereas before the path used to sort of wiggle and wobble like this, now all of a sudden it's gone in two different directions, but those two different directions are so extreme in their opposition to each other. Like, I thought it was just an incredible thing to note that, yeah, here's where we're at now. Like, on the one hand, some of the best hardware that you can tinker around with as a hobbyist is an FPGA, which requires you to know the absolute ins and outs of how that works, either through a language like Verilog or VHDL. And then on the other hand, you've got your Python stuff, which has basically dumbed it down to the point that, it's great from a productivity standpoint that a lot of people can pick up the language easily. But at the same time, you're totally abstracted away from what it's actually doing under the hood, which is driving a processor. I just thought this was an absolutely wonderful coincidence that it did go to those two extremes pretty much around the 20th anniversary of me being here. Because before that, as I said, everything was related to everything else, and I sort of wobbled along a certain path. And that was what the path was. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for today. Very, very quick one. If you like these, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. If you want to see more, hit subscribe, and speak to you soon.